What if this isn't about them at all? What if what you've been calling love is actually a mirror, a reflection of who you believe yourself to be in silence, when no one is watching? You come here hoping to understand how to manifest your specific person. But let's begin with a deeper question. Who are you when they're not looking? When there's no message, no presence, no confirmation? Because love, true love, the kind you're aching to experience, isn't built on reaction. It's born in recognition, and the first person who must recognize your worth is you. Neville Goddard said it simply, everyone is yourself pushed out. This isn't just philosophy. It's the mechanism behind every connection, every smile, every silence. Your specific person is not a distant separate being. They are a living echo of your self-concept, responding in real time to the story you repeat in the theater of your own mind. The real work isn't to get them to come back. The real work is to remember who you are in their presence and even more powerfully in their absence. Because here's the truth many avoid. Wanting someone from a state of lack doesn't magnetize, it repels. You may think you're calling them in, but vibrationally you're confirming their distance. Every time you think, I need them to feel complete, your subconscious receives only one command: I am not whole. And so it keeps creating separation, faithfully like a servant who obeys without question. Now listen gently. You're not wrong for feeling this way. You're not broken. You're not naive. You're remembering love through the lens of longing because it's what you've learned. But that's not the only way. There's another path, one where you become the embodiment of being loved, instead of the seeker of love. One where you awaken not as the chaser, but as the center. Dr. Joe Vitale reminds us that manifestation is vibrational, not mechanical. You don't attract love by repeating words or forcing thoughts. You attract by tuning your frequency to the identity of someone who is already, unquestionably, loved. Not because they said it, but because you feel it. Not because it arrived, but because you became it. This isn't a game of tricks. It's a sacred return. A return to the self that doesn't need confirmation, because it already carries the vibration of connection. You're not here to manipulate someone's feelings, you're here to awaken your magnetic nature. And when you do, when you feel your own essence so fully that your heart forgets to chase, you become the event they're waiting for. This video isn't about getting someone to love you. It's about stepping into the love that's been calling you home, through the reflection of another. Every word you'll hear is designed to realign you with that inner magnetism, with the you who no longer begs, doubts, or waits, but embodies, commands, and receives. So take a deep breath. Let the air fill your chest like certainty returning. Exhale slowly, and with it, release the illusion that you were ever not enough. Because what's about to happen isn't a technique, it's a remembering. And the moment you remember who you really are, they will too. There's something the mind can try to hide, but the body always reveals it. You say you want love, and maybe you visualize, affirm, even script detailed scenes. But beneath the surface, beneath the rituals and repetition, your energy is whispering something else. Without them, I'm not enough. And this is where everything begins to fall apart. Because the subconscious doesn't respond to your desires. It responds to your state. It doesn't hear your words. It feels your truth. This is why most attempts to manifest a specific person don't work. Not because the techniques are wrong, but because they're soaked in a vibration of lack. It's not about saying I'm loved. It's about being someone who no longer needs to convince themselves of it. When your longing says, I'll be whole when they come back, your energy shouts, I'm not whole now. And that's what gets mirrored. Your subconscious isn't your enemy. It's your mirror. It amplifies what you dwell in emotionally. If your desire is entangled with fear, absence, and shame, then the universe delivers more echoes of that same absence, faithfully, without judgment. That's why chasing love never works. It creates a loop of energetic pursuit that keeps the very thing you want running further away. And here's where the shift begins. You are not someone who has to earn love. You are not a project that needs to be perfected before being chosen. You're already the embodiment of what you're trying to attract. But that truth has been buried under layers of survival, of past rejections, of identities that don't belong to you anymore. Before you visualize, before you affirm, before you imagine any reunion, there is a deeper step. You must become the person who is already loved, even in silence, even in solitude. especially there. Because when you stop needing their love to validate your worth, you enter the frequency where love naturally flows back to you, not as a prize, but as a reflection. So feel this with your whole being. You are not asking love to come to you. You are inviting it to return home. You are the home. You are the cause. And your specific person is just the echo. People treat you the way you see yourself. They look at you, but they're not really seeing you. They're seeing the version of yourself you've silently accepted, the unspoken story you carry in your posture, your breath, your expectation. This is the Galatea effect, the living truth that people, especially the ones closest to your heart, respond not to your words, but to your self-image. It doesn't matter what you hope they'll see. If deep down, you walk in the world as someone who believes they are second choice, not enough, easy to leave, or hard to love, then that's the script you're handing them. And without even knowing why, they act it out. Again, and again, and again. Neville Goddard said, "Change your self-concept and you change the world in which you live." That's not philosophy. It's law. It means that your specific person isn't just responding to your energy. They're being cast in a role written by your inner narrative. If you still see yourself as someone who gets abandoned, they'll play the part of the one who leaves. If you unconsciously feel invisible, they'll reflect absence. If you still think love is something you have to earn, they'll mirror conditions. But here's the quiet miracle. The moment you revise the way you see yourself, the entire story begins to shift. It's not instant, it's not theatrical. It's subtle, sacred, cellular. Because the moment you look in the mirror and say, not with your mouth but with your essence, "I am loved," the universe starts echoing that new script back to you. Not because someone decided to change, but because you did. People cannot override the role you hand them vibrationally, but they can and will adapt the moment you rewrite the script. It doesn't require confrontation or pleading. It requires embodiment. When you walk like someone who is already loved, something in the field rearranges. The people in your life start treating you with the care, presence, and desire that your new identity commands. Not because you asked, but because you became. So let this settle. You are not here to convince anyone of your worth. You are here to remember it so deeply that the world forgets it ever questioned you. Your specific person is not separate from this law. They are already responding to your frequency. The only question is, in which version of you are they meeting? Sometimes what feels like love and is really a memory trying to complete itself. You meet someone, and suddenly they feel like home, but not always in the nourishing way. Sometimes it's a home filled with the echoes of your past, echoes of being ignored, echoes of trying harder, echoes of reaching for someone who keeps slipping away. This is not destiny, it's programming, and most of it began long before you even knew what love was. When your desire for your specific person feels urgent, all-consuming, or painful, it's often not just about them. It's the resurfacing of a wound that believes, if I can just get them to love me, I'll finally be safe. But that kind of love is not love. It's survival disguised as romance. It's the inner child saying, "See me, choose me, don't leave me." And until that voice is heard from within, it will keep projecting onto others, begging them to become the parent, the protector, the healer they were never meant to be. This is why certain people trigger something so deep it feels uncontrollable. Not because they're your soul's missing piece, but because they touch the bruise that was never healed. And in that bruise lives a belief. I have to prove I'm enough. That belief doesn't create union. It creates obsession. Because the moment you seek completion in someone else, you place your peace on a pendulum you cannot hold still. But what happens when you stop running toward them and start listening inward? What happens when you ask the part of you that's afraid, "What do you need from me now?" You'll begin to hear the voice of a younger self who never got the reassurance, the stability, the love they deserved. And in that moment, healing becomes possible, not through another's arrival, but through your own presence. This is not about blame, it's about liberation. You're not unworthy because you've chased love. You're not weak because your heart aches. You're human, and you've been doing the best you could with the wiring you inherited, but now you're conscious. Now you can choose. You can become the stable energy your younger self never had. You can become the love you thought you had to earn. And from that place, everything changes. Not because you finally got them, but because you finally got you. Your specific person was never the missing piece. You were, and now you are returning to yourself. Before we go further, pause for just a second. If something inside you is already shifting, if part of you is whispering, "This is what I needed to hear," then don't ignore that signal. The pinned comment has something meant for you. A reflection, a next step, a reminder of what your heart already knows. Go take a look, then come back. We're not done yet. Stop replaying the breakup scene. Start rehearsing the reunion identity. Memory has a rhythm, and unless you consciously change its tune, it will play the same song on repeat. Especially when it hurts. Especially when it involves someone who touched something sacred inside you. The mind, in its attempt to find closure, replays the breakup, the silence, the betrayal, or the moment everything shifted. It hopes that by revisiting the pain, something will finally make sense. But in truth, every replay reinforces the wound. Every return to what happened anchors you deeper into the version of yourself that was left behind. You may not even notice it. You go to bed and the scene slips back into your thoughts, their face, their last words, the unanswered text. And slowly, without meaning to, you begin to identify as the one who was abandoned, the one who was not chosen, the one who almost had love, but lost it. And that self-image becomes your reality, because what you feel repeatedly, especially in silence, becomes what you unconsciously assume, and what you assume, you live. But here is the sacred pivot. You don't need to replay the scene of departure. You can rehearse the identity that exists after the reunion. You can enter the version of yourself who already made peace, who already reconnected, who already feels the quiet stability of being loved, not as a hope but as a fact, not as a fantasy, but as a memory from the future that's already written. This isn't about denying what happened. It's about choosing which timeline you belong to. There is no healing in endlessly reliving the wound. Healing begins when you start embodying the self that exists beyond it. The self who no longer waits by the phone. The self who walks into rooms knowing they are remembered. The self whose heart beats in sync with love, not fear. Every time you mentally replay the separation, you reinforce its presence in your field. But every time you imagine the morning after the reunion, the way your body feels, the way their eyes rest on you, the peace that needs no explanation, you are planting seeds in the soil of your subconscious. Seeds that sprout into circumstances, into meetings, into messages, into moments that look like miracles, but are really just reflections of your new identity. You don't need to relive the end. You are allowed to step into the continuation. Love didn't stop. It's simply waiting for you to change the channel. And the version of you who already knows how this story ends is calling you home. They are not separate. They are responding to your energetic script. There's a moment in your spiritual path when you realize separation is the illusion, not just in theory, but in the tangible, living experience of how reality responds to your consciousness. Your specific person doesn't exist in isolation from your state. They're not acting independently of your assumptions. They are woven into the fabric of your inner world, and whether you know it or not, they are playing a role in the script you've handed them. Neville Goddard didn't just teach that imagination creates reality. He revealed that your relationships are extensions of your inner beliefs. He said, "You can change another by changing your concept of them." And this truth isn't mystical, it's practical. When you alter the way you feel about someone within yourself, their responses in the external world begin to shift, not because you controlled them, but because you removed the energetic boundaries that kept them cast in the old version. Imagine this. A woman who once felt forgotten sits in silence one evening, and instead of obsessing over the absence, she imagines her specific person smiling at her, looking at her with familiarity, ease, and affection. She doesn't beg. She doesn't force. She simply dwells in that vision until it feels more real than the memory of being ignored. And then, without any outer prompting, she receives a message, not out of coincidence, but out of resonance. The universe doesn't delay. It reflects. And the people in your life, including the one you desire most, cannot help but reflect the vibration you've committed to. If you see them as distant, they'll be distant. If you speak about them as indifferent, they'll act accordingly. But if you begin to feel their presence as inevitable, their heart begins to turn toward yours. even without words. This is not manipulation. This is alignment. The truth is, they were never truly disconnected from you. Only your state of consciousness made it seem that way. And when you shift the frequency of your expectation, from longing to fulfillment, from hurt to harmony, they begin to respond, because energetically, you are no longer holding them in the role of the one who left. Speak to them in silence, not as someone who's gone, but as someone who never stopped feeling the pull toward you. Say the things you would say if the pain was gone. Whisper the sentences that bring peace to your body, not anxiety. Let those inner conversations replace the mental noise. Because what you accept within becomes what you experience without. There is no them and you. There is only the field, and you are the one writing its tone. Every assumption, every silent dialogue, every inner vision becomes the stage where love returns not as a visitor, but as a reflection of who you've chosen to be. Wanting seems innocent, natural, even necessary, but vibrationally, wanting is not the energy of creation. It is the frequency of lack. Every time you say, "I want them," you are broadcasting a signal that says, "I do not have." And the universe, precise, neutral, unfiltered, reflects that absence back to you, not as punishment, simply as a mirror. In the desert of wanting, time stretches. Silence lingers. Messages don't come. You begin to believe something is blocking you. But the only block is the invisible wall of your own identification with not having. You've made longing your home. And even when you visualize or affirm, if it's done from the hunger of absence, it still reinforces separation. But here's what changes everything. You don't need to want what already belongs to you. The shift is subtle, yet seismic. When you begin to relate to your specific person not as a goal to chase but as a presence that already exists within your inner atmosphere, your body changes, your energy stabilizes, and something opens. Instead of craving a text, imagine you've already received it. Let the sensation wash over your chest, your stomach, your spine. Let your breath respond the way it does when good news arrives. You don't have to fake it. You only need to feel it. Because your body doesn't know the difference between a memory and a vision when the emotion is real. And emotion is the language of the field. This is why wanting keeps you waiting. It pushes what you desire into a future moment, always just out of reach. But when you shift from want to familiarity, when you say to yourself, "This is just who we are," you collapse time. You exit the chase and enter the memory. And in that memory, your specific person already knows you, already loves you, already feels safe in your presence. You're not creating something from scratch. You're remembering a frequency that already lives within you. The more you familiarize your nervous system with the feeling of reunion, the less resistance remains. Because it's no longer about calling them in, it becomes about accepting that they're already here, vibrationally, spiritually, energetically. Wanting keeps love distant. Familiarity brings it home. The moment you stop waiting for the moment to arrive and begin feeling that it already has, is the moment the outer world catches up. Not because you forced it, but because you finally believed it was yours. And in that belief, the desert becomes a garden. Using affirmations without emotional alignment repeats the scarcity loop. You can say the words 1,000 times. I am loved. They want me. We are already together. But if your body is trembling with doubt, if your breath is shallow, if your chest tightens every time you say it, your subconscious isn't hearing the affirmation. It's absorbing the fear beneath it. This is the quiet sabotage that keeps so many people repeating without receiving. Because the subconscious does not obey your words. It obeys your emotional signature. It's not what you say. It's what you feel as you say it. You can speak abundance while vibrating scarcity. You can declare connection while anchored in panic. And the universe, faithful as always, will reflect the dominant frequency, not the phrase. That's why affirmations spoken from anxiety can backfire. They become more proof of what's missing, more reminders of the gap you're trying to close. This doesn't mean affirmations don't work. They do, but only when the nervous system agrees. Only when the body begins to believe it's safe to hold the new identity. You don't need perfect faith, you need emotional congruence. A match between what you claim and what you feel. That's why stillness matters. That's why breath matters. When you anchor your affirmation in the body, when you touch your heart as you say, "I am chosen," or let your shoulders relax as you whisper, "I am safe in love," something shifts. The mind may still doubt, but the body begins to remember, and when the body remembers, the field responds. This is not about faking calm. It's about finding one moment, one breath, where the new story feels slightly more true than the old one. You don't need to convince yourself. You only need to tune in. If you say they love me while touching the feeling of being cherished even for 3 seconds, that feeling plants a seed far deeper than any repetition done from tension. You are not here to force belief. You are here to embody resonance. Let your affirmations be soft but certain. Let them be felt, not shouted. Let them rise not from need, but from remembrance. Because when your words and your vibration finally walk together, your reality cannot stay the same. It bends, it listens, it answers. Not to your mouth, but to your soul. Imagination is not just a tool, it is the womb of reality. And Neville Goddard knew this better than anyone. He didn't visualize to escape life. He visualized to author it, but not with scattered scenes or rushed images. He used what he called the scene saturation technique. One vivid, emotionally charged scene, replayed until it soaked the subconscious with certainty. Not desire, certainty. This scene is not a fantasy. It's not a wish. It's a lived moment in consciousness, and it must be simple, specific, short enough to repeat, yet rich enough to evoke the feeling of fulfillment. A hand held, a door opened, a whisper before sleep, the way they look at you when no one else is watching, the more ordinary, the more powerful. Because reality responds to familiarity, not grandiosity. The secret is repetition with emotion. You don't rush through it. You don't pile on details. You enter it gently, again and again, until it becomes more real than memory, until the emotional tone saturates your inner world like perfume on skin. Neville didn't visualize once, and then let go. He marinated in the scene, night after night, until the outer world could no longer deny the imprint. The subconscious doesn't care how long something takes. It responds to saturation. It begins to assume what is repeated with feeling. That's how assumptions are born. Not through logic, but through emotional exposure. And when the scene becomes a natural part of your inner experience, the outer must align, not as reward, but as reflection. But here is the most important part. You must feel the relief, not the hope, not the striving, the quiet exhale of already having. That's the vibration that tells your body, this is safe, this is true, this is mine. And once that relief takes root, the manifestation is inevitable. It's no longer something you're trying to create. It's something you're living internally, which means the field is already rearranging to meet you. Let your imaginal act become a sanctuary. Return to it not with pressure, but with presence. Let the scene become a home inside you. And when it does, the world around you will quietly bend to enter its door. Because what is saturated in consciousness must become substance in time. Your SP is waiting for the version of you who stopped chasing them. There is a version of you that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't check the phone 10 times a day. A version of you who walks in the world with the calm certainty of being wanted, of being seen, of being deeply cherished. That version is not a fantasy. It's your original state, buried beneath years of reaching outside of yourself for love that was never supposed to come from the outside. The truth is, the moment you stop needing your specific person to complete you, you begin to radiate the energy that draws them back, not out of strategy, not out of reverse psychology, but because you've released the vibrational grip that once held them as a solution to your pain. And when that grip dissolves, what's left is magnetism. People feel when they are being pulled from desperation. They feel when your desire is laced with fear, but they also feel when your presence becomes a sanctuary. When you no longer need them to validate your worth, you become the most powerful version of yourself, the one they were meant to meet all along. Fall in love with that version, not because it gets results, but because it feels like home, because it liberates you from the cycle of waiting and watching and wondering. This is where your power lives, not in making them come back, but in becoming the person who no longer needs them to feel whole. Imagine walking into a room and not scanning for their attention. Imagine breathing deeply, knowing that your love is no longer conditional on their return. Imagine waking up, and instead of reaching for your phone, you reach inward and find peace. That's the self your SP responds to. Not because you're ignoring them, but because you've remembered who you are without them. And it's radiant. This is the paradox of attraction. When you finally stop searching for them in every reflection, they begin to see themselves in yours. Because the frequency of self-possession is irresistible, and when you inhabit it fully, they will feel it. Not just in energy, but in the silence between your interactions, in the absence of pressure, in the presence of ease. Let this be your quiet revolution. You stop chasing and you start embodying. You stop proving and you start radiating. You stop needing, and love finds its way back. Because you've become the version they were always meant to come home to. Manifesting a specific person is not about changing them. It's about changing you. This is where it all turns, where longing ends and remembrance begins. Because manifesting a specific person was never about convincing them, controlling them, or hoping they'll become who you need. It was always about who you become in the process. It's not about changing their feelings. It's about changing the inner architecture that's been creating your entire love story, again and again without knowing it. You see, when you try to alter someone's behavior without altering your own assumptions, you enter a cycle of resistance. The more you try to shift them, the more your energy communicates, "I don't believe this is mine." And that disbelief becomes the script. It's why so many get stuck, speaking words of love while still holding the identity of being rejected, wanting union while carrying the vibration of abandonment. Neville said, "Change your inner conversation, and the outer will mirror it." This isn't metaphor, it's mechanics. Your inner dialogue is a transmission, and the people in your life receive it, whether through tone, timing, or silence. If your inner world is filled with, "They don't want me, they're with someone else," it's too late. Those thoughts shape your energy, and energy is what they respond to, not appearances. But when you rewrite that internal dialogue, gently, consistently, with presence, your reality adjusts. Not because you manipulated the field, but because you became someone new within it. You started speaking as the version of you who is already loved, who is already chosen, who doesn't need to beg for what is already aligned. Let that version speak. Let them narrate your mornings. Let them whisper during your quietest nights. Let them walk into your thoughts and reshape the landscape. Because when your inner voice stops arguing with the past and starts affirming the present, your subconscious receives the new script, and the field begins to act it out. Your SP isn't the goal. They're the mirror. The moment you stop trying to change the mirror and begin polishing the lens through which you see yourself, everything transforms. Not because they've shifted, but because you have. Not because they've come back, but because you've come home to your original power. And from that place, love no longer feels like a battle. It feels like recognition, like alignment, like truth finally catching up to you. Not as something you chased, but as something you always were. When you become the version of you who is already loved, they'll reflect that instantly. Love doesn't arrive from the outside. It emerges from alignment. Neville reminded us that the outer world only reflects the state we hold within. Your specific person isn't coming to rescue you. They are mirroring the version of you you've been consistently embodying. And the moment that version changes, everything does. You're not manifesting a person. You're manifesting a relationship with yourself that no longer waits, doubts, or begs. Because when you feel already loved, the world becomes a stage where that feeling plays itself out. When your nervous system relaxes into, "I am chosen," your energy shifts, your field stabilizes, and your SP, whether near or far, feels that. This journey was never about controlling them. It was about becoming someone who no longer needs proof to believe. When you stop obsessing over what they're doing and start noticing who you are becoming, the frequency transforms. It goes from grasping to magnetism, from hoping to remembering. Dr. Joe Vitale said it clearly. It's not gaps that attract. It's completeness. When you vibrate as already fulfilled, you collapse the illusion of distance. You stop sending out signals of absence. Instead, you become the space where love naturally arrives. So imagine this. In a higher version of your life, the reunion already happened. The love already deepened. Nothing was missing. Step into that identity, not as performance, but as truth. Let your presence become the evidence. Let your self-concept become the invitation. You don't need to ask, "How long will it take?" Because in consciousness, it's already done. And now, the outer world follows. Quietly, naturally, inevitably.